Hello friends, welcome back. If you've joined me earlier today, you know I'm doing a portrait of my granddaughter Lake, and I've just about finished. I'm getting you here a little bit late. I intended to let you watch me finish up this halftone process. Let me show you my palette just for a second. So here's my palette. Here's Liquin. You understand Liquin, right? Liquin Original Gel. That might be backwards to you. Sorry about that. Uh, So I'm painting in all transparent tones with lots of liquid. The color I am using right now is oxide red, raw umber, a tiny bit of scarlet lake up here to get a little bit more of a red color. And just got a few more things to do. So I am by using transparent colors, I'm definitely following the principle at the moment of you get dark with transparency and opaque with lights. If you want some part of your painting to be darker, you accomplish that using transparent colors, in my opinion. If you want some part of your painting to be lighter, then of course you have to use opaque or white to make it lighter. Now, the one common exception to that rule is when you're doing portraits, because many times the tolerance, the adjustments between dark and light and so on are so precise that it's harder to accomplish it using a rather blunt tool called transparent. So even though I am here doing a portrait at the moment, I'm following the rule, but later on in the process, I will almost certainly be violating that rule of you get dark with transparency and light with opaques. And I'll at some point get dark using opaque paint, but not at the moment. At this moment, I'm actually following that rule, and I'm just about finished. I'm going to do a tiny bit up on her forehead. So as you can see, actually most of the pencil has virtually disappeared. So I'm quite happy. I was a little worried that there might be, that it might end up being too pencil-ish looking, but turns out I didn't have to worry about that at all, because you can, after scumbling in this transparent stuff, you don't even notice the pencil anymore. So I'm quite happy with that. I can add more pencil in later if I want to. Okay, so I think that my underpainting, if you will, in this portrait is all finished. As you can see, it's a pretty accurate rendering, first of all. And I showed you how I did that in my first 3 broadcasts today. And now it's also a very accurate halftone image. It doesn't have the lights because, of course, I can't get any lighter than this. So, but other than that one exception, all the values are very close to their final destination, to their final lightness, darkness, to their final value. Make sense? Okay, so let's turn a big corner right here and start then the overpainting. Most people don't use that term, but because in my world, underpainting is such a distinct and important part of the painting process that I, in fact, do use the term overpainting. Maybe some people do, but I use it because I want to communicate. Okay, so what I have here, as you can see, is a very, very, very thin, accurate halftone brown earth tone painting of my granddaughter. At this point, I'm going to start doing color. Now, quick look at my palette. Titanium white, as you may know if you follow me often, is Alkyd titanium white. Let me get the tube here. It's mostly used up, but you can still read the letters. Winsor Newton makes Griffin Alkyd. That word right there, and again, it might be backwards, Alkyd, is a fast-drying oil paint, and I really, really like that because then I can paint quickly and thickly without worrying about the paint taking 6 weeks to dry, which regular titanium can do without too much trouble. Okay, so I've mixed up a color. I don't know if it's the right color or not. We're all going to find out. I'm sure it's not. We're all going to find out in a minute. And I want to show you how I'm going to do it. Now, I learned this trick definitely from Mark Carter, A-C-R-D, D as in Dan, Carter. Mark Carter, very generous teacher on YouTube. I mention him a lot, partly because he's good and he teaches well, and he's the opposite of me in so many ways that it makes me laugh. But he does. As you can see, this print of my granddaughter is straight off my plain old cheap Hewlett Packard, I think it is. Yeah, printer. Here's some earlier copies. Oh, by the way, okay, so here's a quick lesson. I actually did 4 prints of her before I came with the one that I felt like was color corrected. Does that make sense? So just because it comes flying off your printer doesn't mean you buy it. You look at it, you go, and you make adjustments. So that's the downside of just spitballing it. Just keep going till you find one. When you find one, then you laminate it, as you see that I did here. And I just, again, for what it's worth, I want you to notice the difference in color intensity between a non-laminated and a laminated print. The lamination process, because it's glossy and seals it and so forth, improves the quality of the print significantly. This looks like a cheap desktop color print. It does. This looks like a high quality, maybe even professional, that you would get at a copy center copy, because it's laminated. Okay, but so here's one of Mark Carter's great tricks. Use this to match color. Got it? So I've mixed up I'm going to start with Lake's mid-tone skin tones. Middle skin tones, not the dark, not the light, not the red, but the middle, which this part of her forehead up right here is a great example of that. So I've mixed a bunch of paint and I put it right on the plastic, right on the laminate, and then I squint, and doggone, I'm a lot closer than I thought I would be. I need to add a little bit of red to that. Again, this is Mark Carter's trick. I think it's brilliant. Wipe this off. I don't really need those lines anymore, so if they disappear, that's fine. You probably can't even, can you? Because I think I'm close enough. I'm going to make it slightly darker. So raw umber is my go-to neutral darkening agent, not black. Oh my goodness, black is way too powerful. And blue, if you use ultramarine blue, which I often do for my landscapes, that's going to shift it too far in the blue direction. And so I find that the raw umber is good. So let me try that again. Wipe it off one more time and put it on a little bit redder again. I'm using, at the moment, Naphthol Crimson to achieve this darkening red. Don't want it lighter redder. I want it darker red. Oh, that is so close. Yahoo! So now I can, with considerable confidence, paint that part of her forehead. There, I'm basically done. Now I'm going to share with you one of, again, giving credit to Mark Carter while I'm talking. Yep, the backside of her hand is also that same neutral gray. Mark Carter has this brilliant, wish I had thought of it. He has this brilliant technique for getting his students, portrait students, to start painting properly. plays a mind game with them. He tricks them. And he says, okay, ladies and gentlemen, in the next hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it may be, 2.5 hours this afternoon, you are going to do, in my class, this is what he does with his live students, and it's brilliant. He says, I'm going to make you do the worst portrait painting of your life. So I want your expectations to be in the gutter, in the basement. I want you to have no expectations. This is, I guarantee, the worst portrait painting you'll ever do. Got it? That's what he tells them. So he has them all their expectations way, 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 way low. So that now they're putty in his hands and they will actually do what he tells them because he's already told them this is going to be the worst portrait you ever did. And then he says, here's why it's going to be the worst portrait you ever did. Because you're not going to do any blending at all. You're going to put down a stroke of paint and you're going to leave it. You're not going to blend one color and it's going to be horrible. And everybody goes, yeah, that sounds awful. That'll be a terrible painting. If we don't do any blending, it'll just all be hodgepodge, edgy, bad stuff like that. You with me? You're probably, because of the way I'm telling it, I'm ruining the surprise. And so they get to work and they start doing what I'm doing, putting the paint down and leaving it. Not, in other words, not doing. Oh, I just want to zoom in. Not doing this. Behold my tongue. Even to do it in pretend just gives me the absolute heebie-jeebies. Oh my goodness. Okay, but again, I'm telegraphing. I'm helping you predict where this is going. Many of you, and I've talked about it. So if you may have heard me talk about it, I've just discovered there's a little more halftones I can get done in here with this color that's on my brushes right now. So they proceed to paint, quote unquote, the worst painting of their lives. No blending. So I'm going to move to. Let me see. Hang on a second. I was going to go lighter, but I'm going to go lighter. Okay, so now instead of aiming for this color right here, I'm going to aim for this color right here. So I'm going to add titanium white. Well, then I've actually used up the pile I had. Mark is one of those, by the way, who will go ahead and lay out all his flesh tones before he starts the painting. Daniel Green does the same thing. I took a class from Daniel Green 10 or more years ago and learned that. You can look him up, look Mark Carter up to see how they arrange their palette. I don't, at least at this point in my journey, I don't do that, but maybe I will when I mature. Okay, way too dark. You see, you can see that stroke right there. I'm assuming. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Sorry about all that. Okay, yes, you can see that stroke right there, right? Way too dark. So I'm going to get rid of it. Hello, chatters. Thank you for giving me some comments here. Let me turn you around for just a second so I can see what you've said. Linda Camarada, beautiful work. Thank you. Hey, Matt's Art Stuff. Good to see you again. And Susan. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I'm glad you got that link. And Wisconsin Greg, good to see you guys again. I can see you in. That's great. Raymond says, you can see me in her face. That is really funny. And I think you're probably right. That is funny. I didn't see that coming. Thank you, Raymond. We have 4 grandchildren living with us and their parents. And of course, it's a lot of pressure. Of course, it cuts into my productivity, but it's worth it. They're looking for a home, a house. They'll be moving out soon enough. The day they move out will be the saddest and the happiest day that we've had in the last 10 years. The saddest and the happiest. Okay, still a little bit too dark. So let me add some more titanium to that. Now, color-wise, am I okay in the color realm? Isn't this a great idea? Kudos to, yep, still too dark. Kudos to Mark Carter. I don't know if he made it up. I feel like he did. Maybe he got it from somebody else, but what a great idea. I bought a laminating machine about 1.5 years, 2 years ago now, I guess. And you know, when you buy a piece of equipment you've never had before, you're going, I don't know, is this, am I wasting my money? Only cost about $150 if I remember right. But oh my goodness, talk about a tool that I've used the heck out of. Okay, now I need to add a little bit of yellow to that. So I'm going to be, and a little bit of lightness. So I'm actually going to use a Naples yellow, which is like a pale yellow ochre. Let's see how I am now. Oh, much better, but I need to add some light red. So, whoops, that's too much red. Okay, there we go. Does anybody else ever have that problem? You mean to add just a little bit of something, and then you go, whoa, and I overdid it. I just, you beginners, you students, I want you to know, because I know that happens to you. And I just want you to know it happens to everybody. It happens to the pros. Happens to people way better than me, I'm sure. But so you don't kick yourself. You just say okay. And you get better at mixing. But okay, now it's again too dark and a little bit more yellow. So again, I'll use the Naples yellow instead of titanium white. Very close. I'm squinting to see if it disappears. Yeah, close enough. Okay, now, and I'm going to try to zoom in here a little bit. And again, I happened my new Meagle camera this morning, Cyber Monday. And it'll be here in a little while. I can start. Okay, so here's where Mark Carter would say, okay, now here, boys and girls, he would say, here's why this is going to be the worst portrait of your life. Because as tempted as you are to blend these two colors together, you're not going to do it because why? Because you're creating the worst portrait of your life. So I'm going to try to follow his trick, not do any blending. Just put the color down and leave it. Let the brush stroke just stay there. Let the brush stroke appear. Let it just be there. Resist the temptation to go blendy, 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 or as I usually say, brushy, brushy, brushy. And again, you can probably see what happens 2 hours later as these students are dutifully following their instructor, Mark. Little by little begins to dawn on them that they have not, in fact, produced the worst portrait of their life, but in most cases, the best portrait of their life, because it looks like a master painter, like a John Singer Sargent did it, instead of all blended like they've always done their whole life. So there you go. That's Mark's trick. It's a brilliant one, and I'm trying to do the same thing. Now, right now I'm moving along with remarkable speed. I do not obligate myself to continue this speed, this rate of painting. I give myself permission to come back and do more on top of this, which is what I will do. But I will be striving the entire time to practice what Mark preaches, what I preach as well. Just he did a better job of it, of not blendy, blendy, blendy. Put it down and leave it. Oh my, I could go on for hours about why brush strokes are beautiful. I'm not going to do that. I tackle that subject many times. If you're new to my channel, just hang in there. I will answer that question again. Why are, you could say, rough paintings, why are rough paintings better than smooth ones? In my humble opinion, and not just mine alone, but Rembrandt's and Franz Hals and most, not all, but most of the great painters through history. My wife and I ate at a restaurant last week, and there was a little bronze, it was a steakhouse, and there was a little bronze statue over on the thing, and I said, I wonder if that's a Frederick Remington. I walked over there, and it was just a horse and rider, about that high. There's talk about somebody who knew how to paint. Frederick Remington, my goodness, he was a good painter. I think one of the things as students, we all, I'm going to say you all, we all need to do is study the work of the real masters. And as young people, often we get confused about who the real masters are. Uh, okay, so I'm done with that layer. You see that edge right there? Does that drive you crazy? It almost drives me crazy too. But I'm going to relax and leave it there for now. And if I have to do something, by the way, if I have to do something, what I'll do is mix up a color between this and this and plaster it down in between those two, because this is too big a break right there, right? Which probably means a color mixing problem, not a blending problem. See, most of us now, again, see, I as soon as I start saying this, I go, yeah, but what about the ghost of William Bouguereau is breathing over my shoulder, and he's saying to me, is that so, big shot? Is that true? Is that true? And I go, what? There is William Bouguereau. Okay, so now I've ever done in my whole life was a stroke for stroke copy of a William Bouguereau, and he blends the heck out of this stuff. Oh my goodness. And anyway, so there you go. So every rule can be broken. But in spite of that, in spite of William Bouguereau, I'm still going to say, yeah, but most of the time, he was a freak of nature. Most of the time, loose painting is better than tight painting. That is to say, painting where the brush strokes are still visible. Paintings that are a little more abstract. And again, the ghost of he's not dead yet, the ghost of my good friend David Stickle is a watercolorist, is breathing down my neck saying, is that so, big shot? David, I love you, man. And I love his artwork, and he wins way more competitions than I could ever win in the rest of my life. So there you go. Yeah, but in spite of all that, no, I'm not gonna relent. I'm gonna say, yeah, but nope. The Rembrandt school of painting still wins, I think. I say that with humility and uncertainty, but I think. Now, when you stand in front of a gorgeous, hyper-realistic painting, it's kind of hard to argue with hyper-realism, which is sort of what I'm talking about, right? When you the kind of painting where you feather out all the brush strokes so they're invisible. Hyper-realism, when it's done well, doesn't need much justification. There it is, man. It talks to you and it does the job. Anyway, so do you hear the uncertainty in my voice? But no, after all is said, like I said, I'm going to go with Rembrandt, John Singer Sargent. Thousands of others, hundreds of others, masters. The Western guy Remington, and so on. So do you see my granddaughter here before your very eyes, ladies and gentlemen, step right up, before your very eyes, turning into an oil painting? Now, let me tell you a couple Dan Nelson caveats that I'm going to throw into. This is more or less, except of course with greater skill, but this is more or less the way a Mark Carter would finish his painting. And I'm going to do it to some degree, just continuing to build up more or less opaque layers of color. that stroke right there is a mistake, so I'm going to blend it out. Um, I, on the other hand, am just as I used pencil, and Mark Carter probably wouldn't be caught dead using a pencil on his oil paintings, other weird stuff like that. Um, I'm going to come back to this painting tomorrow when this is completely dry, and I'm going to glaze the whole thing and then go from there. At least that's probably what I'm going to do. But that doesn't stop me right at the moment from wanting to tiny bit lighter. So this is my 1, 2, 3. This is my fourth flesh tone. Each one has gotten lighter than the one before. And I've got at least one more to go. And so far, I've been pretty much straight for value 4, 3, 2, 1. No, 5, 4, 3, 2, and the next one will be 1. I've been straight up one color up the value scale. I haven't entered yet the realm of pink flesh tone. I'm going to do that, and I'm not sure that Mark Carter would do that. I think he might have gone into red already before he gets to this point. I sort of suspect, but I may be wrong about that. But I'm going to do the red as a separate values tree. Can I use that? So going up the tree from dark to light, 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 light. I've been just on one tree the whole time. In a minute, I'm going to switch trees and go up the red values. And also, I haven't gone dark, right? I started with a mid-tone, and I'm still waiting to do, like under here, all the dark tones. But it's working pretty well because the underpainting is just about the exact value that I want. So I'm fairly happy with the results so far. I'm trying to think, how many hours do I have in this painting at this point? And I think it's somewhere around 3 hours, maybe 3.5. So I don't know about you, but that's a pretty decent painting for 3.5 hours. Of course, I'm not finished, of course. Okay, I'm finding myself, the color I'm putting down right now is not different enough from what's already there, so I'm going to pause. I'll come back and do highlights later, but right now I do want to switch over to what I called another color tree, which is the blood flesh. Frank Covino. I studied with a Frank Covino student 20 years ago when I did the Bouguereau painting. He calls it the blood row. There's the flesh row and the shade row and the blood row. By row, same terminology, I'm using tree. So the flesh row is dark flesh, almost black, up to number 01 flesh, almost white. And it's just one color from dark to light. The blush row is what we see here in the cheeks and the fingers and the lips, but it's still dark red, almost black, number 10, up to number 1, almost white, and very pink in between. So again, Frank Covino, studying mostly William Bouguereau, he used the term. Now let's see if my color is close. Oh, very close. Hallelujah. He used the term flesh row, shadow row, and he had all these pre-mixed. There, that's very close. Close enough. You can drive yourself. I feel like you can drive yourself crazy, overdoing the color matching thing. Just get close, get really close, but don't spend all your time. Don't become a perfectionist and never get any painting done because you're never quite happy with the color mix. I feel like all of those strokes are a little bit wild and crazy. But but I will come back and fix them later. So this is my medium blush color, blood color. Yeah, this might be a good time for me to point out why, this is my granddaughter Lake, why is some of her face and fingers very red? I'm not talking about her lips, but her skin. Is her cheek, is the skin on her cheek redder than the skin, say, on her forehead? And the answer is not really, but it looks pinker. Why? If you don't understand how human flesh diffuses light, that could be quite confusing to you. What we're looking at here is a diffusion. That is, there's a translucent object, skin, translucent mass, I should say, skin, flesh, not just skin, flesh, skin and the underlying meat, right, tissue, and it's translucent. It's not opaque like a brick. It's not transparent like paper. It's translucent. Light shines through it. Hey, hang on just a second. Let me grab something to demonstrate this. So excuse me for a moment. I'm going over here to my closet where I have a bunch of teaching supplies. I think I can grab out of here. Okay. I wasn't expecting to get green, but it'll do. I have here a piece of green styrofoam, florist's stuff. Okay, ignore this. This is another painting class. I hope to teach an anatomy class in March. Anyway, this product, this stuff, again, ignore the face. This stuff is translucent, right? So I have a little flashlight here on my pocket knife. So when I shine light on this green stuff, you're seeing mostly reflected light. That is, the light is coming from my pocket knife, hitting this and bouncing off, right? Right. But when I take this same, we've all done this with kids with flashlights, stick it in your mouth. When I take the same light and turn it on like that, that is not reflected light. That is transfused or diffused light. Look at the difference. What color is this green product right now? Okay, just take it. Of course, it's mostly white because it's just bouncing. But what color is it now? Whoa, much more intense blue-green, right? Very washed out, very white, even here in person, blue-green. Okay, now let me turn you toward me for just a second. I don't know if this light's big enough. Here is light hitting my face, right? Bouncing light, off flashlight, off skin, bouncing to you. Forgive me while I do this. Oh, what is that? That is not light bouncing. That is light transfused, diffused, going through a translucent. I'll do it again. In my nose. I won't. I'll spare you. In my mouth. I could stick it in my. Okay, I will stick it in my nose. There we go. It behind my ear. Okay. Okay, that's what flesh does because flesh is translucent, right? So here is my little granddaughter Lake. With a desk lamp basically hitting this side of her face. When you're looking at a human being, you are seeing two kinds of light. One is you're seeing reflected light. In fact, okay, let me get there. Now you can still see reflected light, but when I push it up, you can see the reflected light right there. But what is happening right next to it, right adjacent to the reflected light is diffused or transfused, going through my flesh. That's what all human faces do, especially in the sunlight. So we're back to Lake now. Where the light is hitting her flesh, it's very light. Where the shadow is, her flesh is dark. Like this, they take this cheek, either cheek, right here, it's dark, right? But right in the middle, so light flesh, light reflection, dark reflection, or light source, shade. But right in between those two, it's a slightly crescent shape of pink. Why? Because, sorry, I'm jerking you around. Because on the border between highlight and shade is diffusion. So pink always shows, just look at some photographs. Just go to your computer and type in, I think you could just type in face in sunshine. That's all, face in sunshine. And then hit image and just pick the close-up ones and you'll see this. And maybe you've never noticed it before, but you go, oh my goodness. On every single face, there's sunshine and shade, and right in the middle is pink flesh because of the transfusion. Okay, just there you go. That might be worth the price of admission right there today. So that's why her pinks appear to us, her cheeks appear pink to us in this photograph and in this painting. Because on the boundary between light and shade, we're getting diffusion. The same thing is true with green leaves on a tree. Green leaves bouncing off a tree have a certain color. But if you're underneath a tree and the sun is on the other side of the tree, you look up, your senses are bombarded by this intense chartreuse green color. It's very delightful. Okay, I'm going to now mix up a lighter and slightly warmer version of that pink. And again, without any blending, come in here and put this right on the boundary between the light areas and the dark areas of the pink now, not light and dark general, but just light and dark pink. Now, isn't her face just coming alive compared to what a little while ago it was sort of a deathly looking pasty because it didn't have any blood in it. Now it has lots of blood and it looks a lot more realistic. So just understanding that principle I described, took several minutes to describe, just understanding the principle of the diffusion of light through human flesh helps you. You hardly, I am looking at the photograph, but you hardly have to examine the photograph in great depth because you know exactly where that light's going to be, where the pink's going to be, where it's going to be dark pink and light pink. Now, before I still have, of course, have the pink of her lips to do, which are a different story altogether because they are, in fact, yes, pink. But let me just go back to the highlight areas on her skin. And in spite of Mark Carter's very wise and very careful warning about not exaggerating contrast, I am finding my photograph that I took, just very spontaneous, informal photograph, I'm finding the highlights on her skin somewhat muted. It doesn't look entirely real. The photograph doesn't look very good to me. There we go. So I'm going to improve on the photograph by coming in here and hitting just a little bit of light. See, there's no highlights on her nose or anything, and I feel like there ought to be. Oh, I just blended with my finger. Did you catch me there? I did. One swipe, I blended a mark that I wasn't happy with. So far, I have pretty much followed Mark Carter's tricky advice. Let's do the worst portrait of your life because we're not going to do any blending. And at about this point, most of the students, as I said, sit back and maybe with a gasp at some point go, oh my goodness, I have just done the best portrait of my life. Brilliant, Mark. I love it. Brilliant. Most people have to really have to have this impulse to what I call brushy, have to have it beat out of them because it's such an innate and wrong impulse. Your intuition when you start painting says, oh, I should put paint down and then brush it around. It's so hard to get out of that habit. You don't brush it around. You put it down and leave it. Okay, that's probably a good place for me to stop. Let me tell you where I'm going from here. I'm going to mix up and try to match the dark flesh tones. So a bunch around her eyes, underneath her nose, in the crease here, coupled and a red there as well as flesh tone. And of course inside her mouth. By the way, what color, before I leave then, just real quick, what color, trick question class. All right, am I back? It looks like I'm back. Sorry about that. Again, phone just completely turned off without my permission. I'm just going to finish this broadcast with a question. What color are the whites of the eyes? Not white. What color are the teeth? White. That's all I'm going to say about that. Trust your eyes. Don't listen to the words in the English language. And in this case, match the color with plastic, just like we're going to do. In fact, the whites of the eyes often have a bluish cast to them, and the whites of the teeth often have a yellow ochre cast to them. They're white-ish, but they're not white. Okay, enough for the broadcast. I'm going to work on her a little bit in privacy, and then I'll bring you back in a little while. I think I got all your comments. Did I? Let me check one more time really quickly. Yep. Thanks, Suzanne. Appreciate it. Thanks, you guys. I'll be back in a while.